Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for another Star Wars Battlefront II video. Well, things are ramping up again as this month's update is just around the corner. We don't have a release date yet other than we know it'll be sometime this week, but more likely than not the update will be this upcoming Wednesday, and the community transmission with all the details should be out either tomorrow or the day after. With that said, things are going to be changing in a major way after this update goes live. I'm not going to waste any time here, I want to just jump right into this. Our community manager, Ben, who is responsible for the vast majority of communication we get from DICE on the game, announced this week that he is leaving his role as community manager, and furthermore is leaving the Battlefront II community team altogether. He later announced that as he is transitioning into his new job over the next couple of weeks, he'll still be around until he's settled into his new position, so we have at least a week or two left before he's completely out of the role. From the sounds of it, he's been promoted, as he'll now be producer on one of DICE's various projects, who knows which one, but he'll no longer be the guy communicating with us, giving us the details on bug fixes, future updates, and of course releasing patch notes, trailers, etc. We do have some other standard news we'll get to later, but I really want to talk about this change because it's a huge one. This guy is the primary anchor that keeps the community and the developers connected, and when I read the news, I was shocked. I think most people were, it just was not expected whatsoever. I mean, first off, congratulations to Ben on the promotion. I'm sure he'll do great in another role. That being said, Ben leaving his role as CM is a huge loss. Many of you likely don't remember the other guy we had to deal with. When Battlefront 2 first released, we had a completely different guy as community manager. He was also around during Battlefront 2015. His username was Sledgehammer, and while I don't know how much of it was his fault, who knows if EA was telling him what he could and couldn't say, the guy did not communicate at all. That made the change to Ben in March of 2018 so much better, as pretty much instantly we had a community manager that replied to questions, supplied us with relevant information, and managed to keep his head straight with a community that was out for blood. For those of you who were around early on, you know just how unbelievably upset the entire gaming community was with Battlefront 2 for a variety of reasons, and until things really began to turn around, which I would say started with Obi-Wan, not Grievous because he was so buggy it just made people even angrier, but until the Geonosis update, the Battlefront 2 community was frustrated beyond belief. And most of that frustration was aimed directly at Ben, who had nothing to do with most of the things getting said to him, but some people on Twitter seem to think Ben personally added every bug Battlefront 2 ever had. I personally had to deal with the wrath of the very same community for the first few months of the channel. The difference was, in my case, the things I was getting criticized for were my own fault, and I was able to take that criticism as a learning experience and improve my content in the process, so there was a positive to it. Ben was just having to deal with people upset with the game for not being what it should have been, and blaming a guy that just joined the team and had nothing to do with the game-breaking bugs, very slow content release, and of course the awful original progression system, which was just horrible and worthy of complaints, but they weren't Ben's fault. For the most part, Ben always kept his head cool even when the hate was at its absolute worst, and I think without him communicating with us during that 10-month content drought between the Crate DLC and Grievous, way more people would have just thrown in the towel with this game a lot earlier. That's not to say everything has been perfect. There were definitely a few situations along the way that could have been handled much differently. Especially early on, there were a lot of times he would reply to questions that were serious concerns of the community in a pretty dismissive way, or just with a random unhelpful gif, and there have been times I think he's given answers to questions about why certain things were handled poorly that kind of shift the blame back onto the community, but again, those things didn't happen often, and were mostly during his first 6 months as our CM. Even during the worst times, communication has pretty much always been somewhere in the decent to great range, which is really all most of us are asking for from someone whose job is to communicate with the community. I don't think there was ever a time I felt like the ball was being dropped for any extended period of time. There were a few blunders, but usually they were fixed pretty quick. That is a huge part of the reason as to why I'm pretty worried, or at the very least anxious to see who we get for a replacement. All we know right now, at least from what I've heard, is that another member of the current team is going to be temporarily taking over Ben's responsibilities until they find his replacement, who could be anyone, and while it's unlikely DICE would hire someone and allow them to be mostly silent like the first BF2 community manager was, that possibility is still pretty concerning. Most of the information we get comes from Ben, 95% of it does, and he is the one who chooses what to reply to, so if we get a CM who doesn't like to answer questions and give us hints of content to come, well, you are going to see a drastic slowdown in news, which won't be good for keeping people engaged. One thing I've definitely noticed with Ben is that he's done a really good job getting what the players want to the devs who can actually make it happen. That's not to say everything we want has actually happened. I mean, just look at the skins, there's still so many we need, and honestly some that I just think should be in the game by now. But when you think of the reinforcement situation in particular, I really don't think we would have ever seen Clone Commandos, ARC Troopers, or for sure Droidicas, if it wasn't for Ben relaying the top requests to those working on the game. Really, the only huge disconnect between the devs and the player base comes down to the hero balancing, and I honestly don't know whose fault that is. I'm sure you guys have definitely noticed, but every update there are hero changes made that are just baffling. I think the Anakin nerf in the last update is the best example of the person working on hero balancing just not actively playing the game. Anakin had issues, but Passionate Strike was the last ability on Earth that ever needed a nerf. Anyways, I have a feeling that's less on Ben and more on the hero designer just going ahead and deciding to make changes that may seem good on paper, but are baffling to those who play the game and know the current balance. Regardless, once Ben is gone, expect a pretty massive change when it comes to how we hear about things. Ben goes out of his way every day to talk with people on every form of social media, and just from being a member of other gaming communities, I know for a fact that is not the norm. A lot of games I keep up with have a CM that tweets out links to patch notes, and that's about it. The rest of the time you are on your own, which I don't think anyone wants when it comes to Battlefront 2. Anyways, I just wanted to give you my thoughts on this. I'll be sure to keep you guys updated on who we're getting for a replacement, because how good that person is at their job is going to make or break this community for a very long time. Thanks to Ben for what he's done, and I'm hoping we have nothing to worry about, but we'll find out soon either way. Alright, with all that out of the way, we do have a few pieces of additional news concerning some hero changes and a few other things. DICE has fixes coming for several heroes that ended up getting a new wave of bugs with the February update. Grievous, Iden, and Anakin are all getting fixes for various bugs, and like I said, these were just introduced, and now they're fixing them, so at this point, I don't know, maybe DICE just introduces bugs so then they can say they fixed them the next month, because if that's their strategy, well, I don't know, I don't think it's working very well. Anyway, Grievous is getting his ability bugs fixed, so the ones that cause his abilities to just randomly quit before they finished. Claw Rush, Unrelenting Advance, and even Thrust Surge are all affected by this. If Grievous gets hit when you activate the ability, they just immediately stop and bug out, but it sounds like we won't have to deal with that after this week. They also really need to take a look at his Unrelenting Advance. I've noticed it just doesn't work half the time nowadays. Blaster bolts will just go right through it and completely damage you, which has killed me more than once. The Anakin bug being fixed is to his Heroic Might, and this bug happens like every other game for me. Heroic Might just won't go off, you'll be standing there like a dummy, or it'll just go off but not actually do anything, and then you'll keep the damage reduction but aren't able to attack or do anything after trying to use it. Anakin is just not in a good place at the moment. Almost every time I use him I run into an issue with either Heroic Might or Retribution, which currently has a bug that disables your primary attack for the rest of the game. It's really weird because Anakin was always one of the least bugged heroes, but now, well, they did a number on him. Iden's abilities have a similar problem to Grievous's. If you try to use her stun droid while being attacked, it just won't do anything. Her stun droid is very unreliable at the moment if you try to use it when a lightsaber hero is attacking you. Her shield also has a problem just canceling at random, which isn't as noticeable but is still really annoying. Other heroes have similar problems, but fixes for them are not mentioned. Chewbacca's Ground Slam gets cancelled all the time, as does his Shock Grenade. Kylo's Frenzy also just cancels out if you punch him in the face, which kinda makes that ability really easy to counter, so hopefully all these things are being taken care of as the last patch really messed up some of the heroes. Moving on from the hero changes, we have some news on the HVV map that most of the community doesn't like, and that's Geonosis. Ben confirmed that the team over at DICE is busy working on Geonosis to improve the HVV version, which is a relief, and I'm glad to hear it. I'm sure there's some people out there that like that map, but in my opinion, it's a nightmare. It's just too big, and trying to regroup with your team is extremely annoying. Boba Fett can be an absolute menace as he's basically untouchable if the person knows what they're doing, and really DICE just picked a horrible section of the map for that mode. I guess there probably really isn't any good section of Geonosis for HVV because it's all so open. I mean, the best thing I can think of would be to just take the final Galactic Assault phase and just portion off a really small section of that open area and make a really small chaotic map with no cover. That could be fun and interesting. But Ben does say a rework, so it's likely they're just making a new section of Geonosis using existing assets, or maybe they'll just choose a new section of Supremacy or the GA map. A few other small things, friendly hero AI is apparently being worked on, so soon you'll be able to have friendly heroes fighting alongside you. I'm not sure how that'll work, as I can see people being upset the AI took a hero they wanted to use, but maybe it will only allow AI to choose a hero when all players are using a hero, or something like that. Maybe if you choose the hero, the AI will just instantly die, or that would actually be kind of messed up. But anyways, I could see that being an issue if heroes are being taken by AI. Also, vehicle AI is coming next week, so you'll soon have AI vehicles to deal with in co-op. I think right now it's just the ATST on the sequel maps, there are no other AI vehicles, and I realize I just said AI like 45 times, but all the other ones are coming to the other maps next week. And Ben also said they are looking at giving the Resistance ATST a new skin, just so you can tell it apart from the First Order one, which is a huge relief because I still can't tell which ATSTs are friendly on Asian Class half the time. The person tweeting at Ben about the ATST skin also included an image of a stolen ATST all camoed out, which would look pretty great and would only make sense. Ben also confirmed that all of the limited time skins will be returning at some point, so if you missed out on the Princess Leia or any of the others, they'll be back. For PC players, the chat box is being moved back to where it was. I have absolutely no idea why the devs decided to move it in the first place, because they moved it into the worst place possible, but that'll be back to normal after this week. Ben also let us know once again that new blasters are on DICE's high priority list, which they've said time and time again and nothing has come of it, but maybe we'll actually see some new weapons sometime soon, especially seeing as DICE has been keeping their word pretty consistently, at least as of late. Well guys, that is going to do it for today's video. If you did enjoy the video and could leave a like, I would greatly appreciate it as it really does help out the channel, and I also don't think I formally said thanks for this at any time, but we did hit 200,000 subscribers, which I really do appreciate, so thank you guys for that. Anyway, with all that being said, I will see you in the next one. Bye.